my name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, then give it a thumbs up, subscribe, bell notification, yada yada yada. I hope it's not orangey hued. It's like hella overcast here today, and so we're just dealing with basement lighting. Anyways, I wanted to talk about the books that I read in the past week. I finished basically everything I had on my TBR. The two books that I didn't, one of them is just because I'm not in a space know my name to read, and the other one I had to return to the library because someone had a hold on it and I couldn't renew it. So I hope I can get to that book in the future. But I want to talk about the books that I did read this month and this week, and for the most part, I enjoyed all of them. So first off, I finally read Book of Fire by Michelle Kenny. The author was so nice enough to send me physical copies last December-ish, and then they got caught up in the postal strike in Canada, and then when it showed up, the physical copy of Book of Fire had been, it's missing, and we got it was packaged in a plastic bag being like, sorry, we damaged your stuff. Good luck, from Canada Post. So they sent me a PDF, so I was able to read it that way and print it off. And so this is book 1, and I think it's set to be a trilogy. I have book 2, a physical copy, and I think book 3 comes out early next year. The premise of this is quite interesting. I feel like it kind of brings back my nostalgia for dystopians. The world has kind of imploded after a nuclear bomb was set off, so a bunch of scientists were already creating this underworld for scientific experiments. Most of the population moves into that dome for safety reasons, and it's this sort of tech dystopian tyrannical sort of situation. But our main characters are actually kind of people who live in the forest outside, and they have kind of created their own civilization away from that underground scientific run community. There's this whole thing about a book and legacy and family, and our main character goes into the scientific world to try and save her family. Several times I noticed editing errors, so I definitely need to go through another batch of edits. Several times I saw a word being used in past tense when it should have been used in present tense. The entire book was written as such, and then there was a couple times where it was the word were instead of is or was. So that was just something I noticed. It happened enough times for me to notice. I think my big kind of beef with this book was it put a lot of assumptions onto the reader that you would know stuff about this world, but never gives you that information. And it took away from the world. I wasn't sure what the structure was. There was no limitations placed. There's some, the scientific stuff is just sort of thrown in, again, without much structure or limitations put on it. So I don't think there was any thoughts in the distance of that. I feel like it also tried to take on this big behemoth task plot-wise, but then for some reason condensed it into a couple hundred pages. I didn't necessarily really like all the characters. They felt relatively meh, flat for me. I had a hard time distincting from a lot of the male voices, especially. It falls into one of the tropes that I kind of hate of the love triangle of this mundane girl who two super attractive, super competitive, super skilled guys from opposite sides for some reason are both inexplicably kind of fighting over her. It reminded me a lot, elements of it, The Hunger Games, but I feel like The Hunger Games was just something that had a lot more stuff that worked for me as a reader. Yeah, I think my really difficulty with this book was there was just it specifies we've reverted back some of these societies to our old history of humanity, but we've morphed it a little bit, and it never specifies what parts we've taken of these old societies of Greek culture and whatever. None of that is explained, and there wasn't enough division sort of explained between the under scientific world and the upside world. It was assumed that they were just oh, they're polar opposites, but I think that needed to be more built for me to comprehend why these people were the villains and why these people were the good people. Because honestly, it just seemed kind of a mixed bag of people disagreeing over something rather than this big conflict. So in the end, I give this book a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I think I will read the sequel, though. The author was nice enough to send me the book too, so I will definitely hope to get to that one in the next few months. Then I did a reread of The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden. The series is so good. The end of this book hurts so much, though. So we're following Vasilisa. She spends the majority of this book, I always say pulling a Mulan, but dressed as a boy. Russia is Russia, that men have, it's safer to travel as a man. the Mongolian horde that's kind of operating Russia. They're still like these grand kingdoms, and they collect taxes from all of these little grand kingdoms and villages. And then all of a sudden they've stopped paying taxes, and now villages are being attacked and burned down, and people are being taken and all that sort of stuff. So she's trying to step in and stop that. But of course, someone is helping the Huns. And then we've got this battle of morals, I guess, between this like priest guy from the first book. He's back. He's still a big douche, and she's reconnecting with her sister in this as well. So lots happens. Catherine Arden just has the most amazing writing, and I can't remember where I saw it this week, but someone was literally like, Catherine Arden's writing is literally what I would expect from an author from Vermont. And I was like, is she from Vermont? Because that's kind of true. And looked like, yeah, she currently lives in Vermont. So that's very weird. It's kind of true. Yeah, so reread. Absolutely love this series. 5 out of 5 stars. I also did a reread of The Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn. Hi, I'm Sam. This is my favorite series. And when I need just a bit of a break between the books, I have, for the past couple months, just picked up The Kiss Quotient or A Curious Beginning, it seems like. I'm okay with those choices that I've made. I think this is the 7th time I've read this book. I don't know what to do with myself anymore. As we love to use as the defense in our book, in the book community, of I could be on drugs, and I'm not. So this is a step up from that. Then I read The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. I had not read this series, this book. It was the last book in the series, so I was refreshed and picked this bad boy up. It picks off exactly where The Girl in the Tower ends, and we start learning more about Vasilissa's niece and her connection with Midnight and the Bear and the Nightingale, which ties back to the beginning. I loved the battle that it ends with. She explains in the author's note that she always wanted to end it at that one. It is one of the battles that I, for some reason, do remember from university studies, so that was really cool. And she's just a badass. Vasilissa is just like, she goes through so much crap in this book. Like, she's really a feminist for the time period, especially. And she's just so much working against her. It just like goes full like badass and like connecting with the Bear and the Nightingale. The interwovenness of like history, like real history, and the folklores in here is so freaking seamless. I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. It's still very clearly Russia, but it's still very clearly not this Russia. It has all these influences of magical realism. It's just an amazingly written series, and I'm so happy I own these books. I could definitely see myself coming back and rereading them every once in a while, and I just love Catherine Arden's writing. I can't wait to see what else she comes up with in the YA adult genre once her Small Spaces series is done. Yeah, so 5 out of 5 stars, duh. I also read The Mystwick School for Musicraft by, oh my god, Jessica Khoury, is it? It was one of the Audible originals for October, and I was like, that's a cute cover. And then I noticed that they're releasing, it was an Audible only, so it was written for audiobook, and then I noticed the author actually has the book coming out in physical copy, and I think it's January. I may honestly pick it up. It's not an exact ripoff, but it pays a lot of homage to something like Harry Potter. So our main character lives with her aunt, her parents. Well, her mother has died and her father disappeared, and she's always wanted to go to a school for, it's called Musicraft. It's like magical school, but instead of just like spells and like whatever, you create magic with music, whether that's like an instrument or being a composer or a conductor, whatever it may be. And it's a very elite school. She wants to get in so badly, and her audition just goes disastrously. She doesn't expect to get in, and then all of a sudden she gets a letter showing up, and it finds out there's a little bit of confusion and a mix-up, but she wants to prove that she has the ability to stay. And it is because her mother died, and this is where her mother went to school, and she wants to be more connected to her mother. There's a ghost making an appearance that is haunting her, and she doesn't exactly get along with her roommate to start. It was really adorable. It was a really fun book. The audiobook is fantastic. They actually have music playing, and I think it specifies in like the Audible description that there's like an actual choir that they employed to play in the audiobook. It just really did add a lot to it. I can't tell you how like authentic all of the music information is there. I knew once how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb on a piano, and that is the extent of my ability when it comes to music conducting. I can tell you all about K-pop, but the actual conducting of music, I'm out of any genre. So I can't comment on that, but it was really, really fun, and I loved the main character especially. She's very I don't want to say pigheaded, but she's very determined, and there's times where she feels defeated, and there's other times where she wants to push through. And I feel like she was quite relatable. It's good morals overall, and I hope they make it into a series, because I feel like you could do like a Harry Potter thing of when she comes back after her first year, which is an absolute chaos, what happens in the next year? Because we find out that she has a gift that no one kind of knew about. So definitely enjoyed. I would highly recommend it, like 4 or 5 out of 5 stars. And then lastly, switching gears dramatically, I read The Confessions of Franny Langdon by Sarah Collins. This book has like a kind of, honestly, I feel like unjustifiably low average on Goodreads. So please don't look at that. I don't feel like that is representative of this book at all. So it actually follows a murder trial, essentially. So our main character is, she was born on a plantation in Jamaica. And through a series of events, she ends up in England, in London, as essentially like the maid to a scientist and his wife. And a romance develops between the wife and her. But the whole murder trial is someone murdered the wife and the husband, and they find her maid staff of the house find our main character asleep in the wife's bed, and there's blood everywhere. And so she is accused. It deals, it does flash back and forth quite a bit, and it's basically like letters that the main character is writing to you, and you are her defense lawyer. Honestly, this book really blew me out of the water. I don't understand how it has such a low rating on Goodreads. It was interesting. The main character, I'm trying to remember exactly what the speciality is called, but one of the characters in here is, I think is it eugenics? Eugenics, the research, the stance of like black people are inferior and I will figure it out biologically, that kind of horror crap. One of the characters is in that. It is in that field, and we talk a little bit. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like Joseph Mengele about his scientific experiments during World War II in the concentration camps. Never to that extent or detail or anything like that, but that mentality was still very there, and he blurred ethical lines for sure in order to prove this stuff. It's not an easy read, though. The N-word is dropped throughout the whole thing because it is a historical novel. It's uncomfortable, but I thought it was really interesting. It's not a happy ending. It's not this bow-tied happily ever after of a historical. It is a historical fiction. I feel like as a society, we talk a lot about like plantations out, in their original lands, like Jamaica. And it is a Jamaican-owned voices author. But I feel like it's a whole other thing of talking about colored people when slavery is abolished in those colonial countries, when they go to England. We have this whole thing of Pocahontas being like with John Smith and the whole Disney movie. No, she was brought back to England and been like, look, we can civilize the natives. And probably a more slurry name. But that is what we did. We brought these, and then but they didn't have any rights. She technically shouldn't have been a maid or enslaved or passed off because she's in England. She's supposed to be a freed person, but that's not how that was. And there was that time period where you still had to, slavery is not legal here, but people are all in this industry. These people all made their money in their industry. They're not going to not do it now all of a sudden. So they still didn't have rights. And I remember we read a lot of stuff in university. Especially, I took this one course that I hated the professor, and the book itself was one of the most, as someone who did Russian history, this book was one of the most dry texts I've ever read in my life. But it is a book called There Are No Slaves in France. And we always think of like, oh no, it's just in the colonized areas. No, that's not how that happened. So I feel like this took on that interesting sort of topic, and the main character even like explains during the thing when the trial's going on, she's like, I know I'm going to be found guilty. I'm a black woman. He's a white lawyer. They've already made their minds up in this situation, which is just sad because we honestly haven't moved beyond that all that much when you look at the news now. So that was disappointing, but I really, really enjoyed this book. 5 out of 5 stars. I wouldn't change anything. It's slower paced because of just the content, but it's interesting, and I would really highly recommend it. So those are the books that I read this week. Let me know in the comment section down below what you read this week. I'd love to know. And if you've read any of these, I'd love to know your thoughts. I will make sure to link all of these in the description box down below, along with all of my social media. If you follow me, I will follow you